I am a bit of a germaphobe. I don't like being around sick people. I compulsively wash my hands. I take vitamins religiously and generally try to avoid catching the plague, like any sane person would do. Those of you who are AP and honors students know that missing school only creates more work for ourselves. Not to mention, each student absence costs the school between $30 to $50. This might not sound like much, but the costs add up when Carlsbad Unified School District has an average of 441 daily absences. If we estimate that 50% of these absences are due to illness, that means that the district is losing $9,000 a day to runny noses and coughs. So, when I sit down to a likely never-before-cleaned iPad at my desk in math, I wince a little. My mind wanders to all the people who have touched, coughed, and sneezed on the tablet before me. I don't know if Typhoid Mary from period 3 covered her cough, and I am certainly not willing to risk missing even a couple precious days of school at home recovering from whatever disease is circulating Sage Creek this week. For this reason, my genius project was to create a new iPad cart with UV technology that could both sterilize and charge the iPads at once. UV lights are already used in hospitals, laboratories, and even the goggle storage cabinets here at Sage Creek because they're able to kill bacteria by denaturing their DNA. As some of you might know, our current iPad carts are essentially rolling cabinets with Apple charging cables and locks. Each math classroom has between 30 to 40 iPads, so any sort of sterilization solution would have to be very time efficient in order to be reasonable. Amazon sells UV sterilizing wands for $50 a piece, but this solution is both pricey and time-consuming, as students would have to individually clean each iPad. With my challenge laid out for me, I began to design a plan to fix the iPad issue. Before I created a physical solution to the iPad problem, I first had to prove that the problem actually existed. I started by creating an experimental design to determine the quantity of bacteria on the surfaces of our iPads and how they were affected by UV lights. Fortunately, through experience as president of the Biomedical Sciences Club here on campus, I was already connected to several professionals who were able to help me polish my design and ensure that my results were statistically significant. I specifically remember, after meeting with my primary mentor over coffee, one of her first comments being, "Well, it's pretty good for a high school student." While this wasn't exactly the feedback I had been hoping for, it was definitely the feedback I needed. Undaunted, I submitted an edited version to my second mentor and finally received the positive feedback I had been hoping for. Whether my early mistakes were due to lack of specificity or simple inexperience, I rewrote my experimental design, excited to apply the new knowledge I had gained from my meetings. Shortly thereafter, I completed my pilot experiment, from which I was able to learn from my mistakes and make a few adjustments before going through with trial 2. The second trial was very successful, and I was able to obtain all the data I needed from Greasebox, Turner's, Menente's, McLean's, and Woolley's classrooms. Fair warning, these next photos may make you never want to touch an iPad again. As some of you might be familiar, agar is usually a yellowish clear color. However, this agar is specially formulated with sheep's blood and non-pathogen-specific antibiotics, which allow for only pathogenic bacteria to be grown. This means that each and every colony you see here has the potential to infect a student. Luckily, if you're in Ms. Woolley's class, you're probably safe, because she wipes down her iPads with Lysol every few days. I could now confidently confirm my two hypotheses. Pathogenic bacteria did in fact exist on the iPads, and this bacteria could be eliminated using UV lights. Shortly after finishing my research, I received a grant from our generous Sage Creek PTSA, which allowed me to purchase the materials I needed in order to create a working prototype. Now, I had the research, I had the funding, I had everything I needed. I just had to put it all together. Yet somehow, this was the hardest part of my project. I spent hours online and in-store shopping, which normally would be fun, except that I was looking through hundreds of Sterilite and Rubbermaid containers, various wavelength-producing UV lights, and other incredibly exciting components that I needed in order to create a working prototype. I will be the first to admit that I felt a little out of place in the electrical aisle of Home Depot without a flannel or beard. But with the help of some excellent customer service, I eventually found everything I needed. While I was able to rely on past experience from science courses for the research phase of my project, I found that I had absolutely nothing to go off of when it came to safely wiring the cabinet or using power tools. Luckily, I was able to enlist the help of my very handy dad one weekend, whose assistance probably saved me from losing a couple of fingers. We drilled holes in the backs of the plastic cabinets and used epoxy glue to mount the UV lights. I also installed an automatic timer with a 5-minute shutoff that would prevent the lights from being left on for an extended period of time. At last, my prototype was complete. I now had a working iPad cart capable of charging and sterilizing the iPads at once. My plan is to donate my prototype to the math department so that my project can continue to have a lasting impact on Sage Creek, saving hundreds, maybe even thousands of dollars by preventing student absences. My takeaway from this project is that when you find something you're passionate about, organize your goals into achievable tasks and take advantage of the resources around you. You might be surprised by what you find. For me, I found a vast inventory of knowledge right here in Sage Creek in the form of my 2 mentors. I didn't even have to look outside of my own school for project funding. Looking back, this experience will also be incredibly helpful to me as I pursue a professional career. Designing a lab, conducting an experiment, and building a prototype were all tasks that I was very unfamiliar with. But by challenging myself to complete them, I grew both as a scientist and as a person. Now, I don't even care who touches, sneezes, or coughs on the iPads, because I know that my own innovation can be used to prevent the spread of disease here at Sage Creek. Thank you.